When I first came to France to teach English back in the day, I had been taking weekly French lessons just for fun with a small group of other people at the Alliance Française for about a year and a half before the big move. And these were serious lessons with other Americans who really did want to learn French, no English allowed. And at that time, I'd say I had about an intermediate level and could read, write, and I thought comprehend at about a low intermediate level. But I was in for the shock of my life when I arrived in France and had to converse in real time with actual French people. I had a really hard time understanding spoken, spontaneous French in regular everyday life situations outside the classroom. So for anyone learning a foreign language with the goal of actually talking to native speakers, I'm here to tell you to back off all of the grammar exercises, back off all the writing and reading stuff, and make comprehension a focus. That other stuff could be less of a focus, but what you need to really spend your time on is comprehension if your goal is to actually go to that country and speak with native speakers. So here on this channel, we talk about living in France and everything that goes with it from an American point of view. So here I'm going to talk about my experience learning French, and I'm going to tell you exactly why I feel so strongly about this. Bonjour tout le monde, welcome back. I'm Diane, and I hope that by sharing my experience learning French, something I'll continue to do forever, also moving to France, navigating the ins and outs of French culture and all, I hope that the content here helps you to either not make the same mistakes that I have, or at least be more aware of what you'll encounter in France and when interacting with the French. So today's topic is one I do feel strongly about, and it falls into the learn from my mistakes category. So the first thing I want to address is, why did I have such a hard time understanding French people? Because, I spent a lot of time working on reading and writing, and I thought speaking, but I spent too much time working on the other parts of language learning that ultimately wouldn't matter very much when I was face to face with an actual French person. So the problem was, quite simply, I just wasn't used to hearing fast, current spoken French. And for a really long time, a good year and a half, the words just seemed to jumble together and they were unrecognizable to me about half the time. So I'd catch the first part, je vais, but I'd miss where the person was going. Or I'd hear la piscine and I knew it was something about the pool, but my ear just at that time couldn't decipher between the garbled sounds at the beginning to know who was going swimming or if it was in the past or the future. I'd catch either the beginning of that or the end of the sentence or catch a few words. And this went on, like I said, for a while, even though I could write an email, I could read, and yes, I could speak, but I had trouble understanding in real time what was being said back to me at regular speed. So a truth is that for a good couple of months, I heard a collection of sounds, really, and I couldn't make any sense of what it was. And I'd sometimes ask people to quickly write what they were saying instead, because especially with the liaison in French, you hear a word and then another word and it comes together. And if you had seen them separately, you'd know what they were talking about, but together your ear's just not tuned in to what that is all about and what it means. So yeah, after I'd see something written, or if I asked someone to repeat and slow down, I would understand, but it was frustrating to say the least, So yeah, I often went home and I'm like, what's my problem? I would always think to myself, like, come on, you studied French, you know a lot of words, like, grammar, you know this, you know that, you can write. So why wasn't I understanding? And the thing is that if you don't make comprehension a priority, of course you're going to struggle, really. And when I say comprehension practice, I don't mean all the little audio clips and exercises in class where an articulate French person speaks really nicely and enunciates in slow, proper, 100% proper French. No slang. Everyone in class nailed those, me included. We all thought we were geniuses with the educational exercises and everything going on in class. But if I had known then that I was moving to France, what should I have done? Well, I should have taken those exercises, added in a ton of background noise to mimic a city street, sped up the tape so the person's talking a mile a minute, and then added in some slang, and I should have spent a lot more time listening to podcasts and French television programs and movies. That would have been more realistic and something that would have helped me out. But hindsight's 2020, right? And I know someone out there is nodding along because you've been there, or you're there now, or you remember, or that this is going to be you in the future because you're currently studying French and you're not focusing enough on comprehension. But You're not alone, as I always say, and I just want to clarify one thing before we move on. If you're learning French for fun, because it's just something you enjoy, you don't really have a need to speak it. You do speak it, but you don't have a need to speak it except for your vacation to France or a French-speaking country. Just keep on doing what you're doing. That's fine. If you just want to converse with French people on your trip, or keep your mind active, or for whatever reason, that's totally cool. We have different reasons for learning. We approach learning differently. You need to do what works for you. But, and here comes the big but, if you're learning French out of necessity because you're going to be conversing with native French speakers because you're moving to a French-speaking country or something along those lines, well, here's my advice. This is an entirely different ballgame. Do everything in your power now and when you arrive to focus on comprehension. You're going to set yourself up for success. So right now, find native speakers to talk to. Listen to French TV, radio, movies, podcasts, whatever it is. Use the internet to your advantage and do whatever you can to improve your comprehension with people speaking real French. Now, not tomorrow. Get on it today. And just so no one gets the wrong idea, let me say right now that grammar, pronunciation, written skills, reading skills, they're all important, right? I'm not saying that other elements of language learning aren't essential. They are. But they will not matter in the moment if you can't understand someone who's face to face with you and you can't make yourself understood when it counts. It'll not only be embarrassing for you, but maybe even the other person, and it's just going to leave you feeling less than. And one other clarification, if you're a beginner, you absolutely need to learn the basics first before focusing on comprehension. So yeah, for beginners who are just starting out, learn the basic grammar, expand your vocabulary, work your way up to that intermediate level if it works for you before focusing on comprehension. But if you know you're moving to France or a French-speaking country, start now, whether you're at an intermediate level or not. Just move beyond those basics when you're ready and then spend twice as much or 3 times as much time on comprehension. All the grammar practice in the world couldn't have helped me in the moment because my comprehension skills were not up to speed. But I could write a great email. But it's humiliating sometimes when someone's trying to talk to you or you're trying to talk to them and you're just not understanding everything they're saying. Okay, so let me paint the picture another way. Imagine speaking your native language to 2 foreigners visiting your home country. I'm just going to go through 2 different hypothetical situations, and to give you some background on this situation, you're in a rush, you're in a big city, you're already late for work, your train was late, there's a big mess of a morning. 2 tourists stop you in the street, one after the other. So situation 1, guy 1, a guy approaches you, he asks you a question about directions to a museum. He has a moderate accent, but you understood him. He doesn't make any mistakes. You got the question right off the bat, right? You answer the question just like a regular English speaker would, regular pace. And you're like, hey, do you need help finding the metro station or this? And he just kind of looks at you blankly and stares, and he asks you to repeat yourself, but slower. So you repeat what you said a little slower, but he still has no clue. He says, metro? You repeat it again. He isn't getting it. And you're getting frustrated. You're looking at your watch and you tell him, I'm really sorry. It's this way, but I have to get to work, right? And the guy doesn't really know which way is which, right? Now, contrast that with situation number 2. Another guy approaches you and he asks you a question with a very heavy accent. He used the wrong tense of the verb. He made mistakes, but you understood him fine, just like you did with the first guy, despite his mistakes and his heavier accent. But you answered the question again in regular paced English, and then you asked him if he needed help finding the metro station to get there. And he replies without missing a beat, except with a bunch of errors again. He replies perfectly, you understood his reply, and you were glad to learn he already had a map, you conversed for a few more seconds, he knew where the station was, he said thank you, and you continued on to work. He had no problem figuring out where he was going because he understood your reply. Now, who would you rather talk to, and who would you be more at ease around when you're in a rush on your way to work when you're encountering a foreigner needing your help? So, no offense to guy number 1, but I'd rather talk to guy number 2. The grammar, the pronunciation, and the accent can be perfected later. Those things weren't perfect in his case, but he's already able to understand, and he made himself understood despite his errors. And that's all that matters in the moment, In an emergency type of situation, will it matter if you can conjugate every verb perfectly in the moment? If you can't even understand the instructions from the emergency personnel? No, that's an extreme situation, but it does parallel everyday life. And truth be told, I was guy number 1. That was me, guy number 1. And I was that guy for a while, and every time I didn't understand, it would just reinforce a really negative mental loop I had going on that I sucked at French. I didn't belong here. I should go home. I don't even want to try. I didn't want to get better, and I didn't want to open my mouth. And it really takes time, and the only way to triumph over this is to get rid of your perfectionist tendencies, jump over that hurdle, and just throw yourself in to get to the other side, because it does get better. You will get through it with time, but to get better, you have to keep trying. And speaking of getting better, to help you do so sooner rather than later, let me reintroduce you to my sponsor today, Lingoda, the #1 trusted online language school based in Berlin. So if you've been on the fence about improving your language skills, I'm so excited to invite you to sign up for the upcoming Lingoda Language Sprint. It's an intensive language course where if you attend all of your classes over the 3-month time frame kicking off October 31st, you will get up to 100% cash back. So if you want to brush up on your French and make real progress in a short amount of time, the Lingoda Language Sprint is exactly what you need to feel confident interacting with the French. If you're serious about language learning and saving money, joining the Lingoda Language Sprint is a must. So let this be the sign you need to take action. Personally, I first heard of Lingoda back in 2017, and both my husband Tom and I have taken classes with them on the easy-to-use platform. And I love that you can take live classes from the comfort of your home computer, signing up in just a few clicks, all around the clock, no matter your time zone. And it's all with native speaking teachers and only a handful of students per class. The curriculum is interactive, so you're not being taught at, but you're an active participant in a live class with others. In addition to French, you can learn German, Spanish, English, or business English, and their curriculum will get you real results fast, no matter your current level. The classes I've taken have focused on grammar, since that's a weak spot of mine in French, but no matter what your focus is, there's a class that's going to get you closer to where you want to go in a fun, encouraging learning environment. And here are some clips of my husband Tom signing up for some classes just to brush up on his business English. Now, if you're like me, you cannot resist a deal, and this is just the thing to motivate you to level up your language skills. If you do the Super Sprint option, you'll need to attend 30 classes a month for 3 months, and you'll get 100% cash back. But if that's too rigorous, don't worry, opt for the Sprint, where you attend 15 classes a month for 3 months, and you'll get 50% cash back. They're both great deals, and just note, you'll pay the first month's payment right up front once you sign up. So are you ready to be the champion? Join the last Sprint promotion of 2021 now by signing up below with my link. Do so by October 27th, and be sure to use the voucher code CHAMP22. That will give you a €20 discount on the first month's payment. Also, don't forget to check out Lingoda's terms and conditions before joining. All right, thank you, and now back to the video. So yeah, I know I'm not the only one who is overly focused on everything but comprehension. You know, it was easier to open a book and to memorize some grammar and to focus on little minuscule details that don't matter in the long run, because you don't have to make a bunch of mistakes in front of everyone, right? And just the other week, I was on a French language learning site, and I saw in the comments that French language learners were getting crazy hyper-focused on detailed, complex grammar concepts. And the post was entirely about another concept. It was about something else, but a bunch of people went on this tangent, you know, asking when to use a certain verb, and they got overly concerned with these differences between tenses that they'll probably never use, and that verb was obscure, and down the rabbit hole they went. And that's a very familiar place for me. I used to do it all the time. But again, none of that matters when you're face to face with a French person if you can't understand what they're asking you, even after repeating it 3 times. So I know we have a tendency to want to really learn all that grammar and learn all of those things, but if you're so focused on grammar and writing that you can't formulate a coherent response or understand one being said to you, you know, it's not worth it, right? And I realize grammar and comprehension aren't mutually exclusive. In a perfect world, we'd all be masters at everything, and they would all exist in their little spheres. And of course, you can have decent comprehension and grammar. You know, it's not one or the other. But there's usually an imbalance somewhere with reading, writing, speaking, and understanding. And my point is to do as much as possible to improve your comprehension, because speaking, when you're actually living in the country, is the most important thing for most people. So just to touch on that a little further, why are we so focused on grammar and pronunciation and everything but comprehension? Well, I think it has to do with classroom learning. You know, it's because we don't always have native speakers to practice with when we're not in a French-speaking country. They're just not here for us to converse with. And maybe it's easier to, like I said, open a book, learn the grammar, practice writing, which are important, but not as much as comprehension, you know? And I asked a few people, like, what's your biggest hardship? Like, what's your biggest struggle with learning French? And know what a bunch of people replied? To my surprise, it wasn't grammar. It wasn't vocabulary. It wasn't figuring out complicated conjugations, because you could go down the rabbit hole and figure that stuff out. But It's that they had no native speakers to practice comprehension with. And no amount of book learning is going to help you become better at comprehension. So yeah, we do what we have available at our disposal. We open that book because we don't really have French people to talk to all the time. And sure, we can listen to a podcast and work on our oral comprehension, but it's not the same as an actual person in front of you. So what's so great about having a good level of comprehension? Well, in a word, everything. You'll feel like a total boss when you can understand what people are saying most of the time without having to sheepishly ask them, excuse me, can you repeat that, please? You'll feel more confident when making a phone call. You'll just feel more self-assured in general. And really, for the longest time, I was scared. I was scared to talk unless it was my husband because, I knew I wasn't going to understand the reply. And that's despite the fact that I could formulate a perfectly understandable question. I just couldn't get the reply, and having a good level of comprehension and an ability to respond without skipping a beat, it can almost trick people into thinking your French level is higher than it is, even if you make grammar mistakes or you don't really know all the vocabulary, none of it will matter if you have an accent or you don't know all your grammar if people can understand you most of the time and understand what you're trying to ask and you can easily converse with people, and I have to say, for me personally, my comprehension probably started to improve a few months after I moved to France, but for me to feel really comfortable, it took a good year and a half, maybe even 2 years. And that's going to depend on you. But, after hearing French around me all the time, I would listen to the radio in the morning. I would, make a deliberate attempt to improve. And I don't think there was a light bulb moment where French magically began to click. And I don't remember the exact moment when I stopped translating and just started replying. It was like a kind of a magic transformation in the brain, but I don't remember the exact moment where I didn't have to translate to English. But the shift did happen, and it will happen for you too if you just stick with it. And finally, just wherever you are now, know that language learning is a work in progress, a lifelong one, and it's gradual. And it might even sneak up on you in the best way. You will improve. So even when you don't think you're learning or you're in a rut, you are absorbing what's going on around you. Don't fault yourself if you're not where you want to be. We're only human. You need to give yourself a pass. And I still tell myself that daily when I'm like, oh, you should have known that, or oh, you could have said that better. I am unnecessarily hard on myself sometimes, and I need little reminders too. So I'm saying this for myself as much as I'm saying it for you. And we've all come a long way. So be proud of where you are. And you can always up your comprehension game. I'm just reminding you here to do it sooner than later. Always know that you can improve, and if you are coming to France, get on that comprehension and you'll surprise yourself. And you know what? I'll leave it there for today. I'd love to know down below if you can relate to anything I've said here. And thank you again to Lingoda for sponsoring this video. It's companies like these that help me to keep content free for you, the viewer, and continue on with this whole YouTube thing. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate your support more than you know. And I'll see you back here next time on We in France. Salut!